Welcome to another episode of Uncommon Voices, Uncommon Visions. I'm your host, Dr. Valerie Nyberg, and I have with me today my youngest son, Jacob Nyberg. He's currently a junior at the University of Iowa studying computer science. And we actually, this will be the second time we've done an episode together. We did an episode 12 together, talking about navigating the complexity of adolescence. So I'll just go ahead and get started. What does it mean to be Swedish, Irish, Native American, Eskimo, and Black? And how do you identify yourself racially?
Okay, well, I identify myself as mixed. Obviously, I don't think there's any real other way to identify. And what does it mean? I think it's a blessing and a curse, I guess, in the sense that, I think being multiracial is, I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I think you have access, closer access to different cultures, I guess. You have more access versus if you were just one race.
What do you mean by access?
Um, well, I would say like being like if you were only black, right? So if my skin were darker, like it is I don't know. If my skin were if I was only black, right?
Mhm.
Then my parents would be black, right? And there's a higher um, kind of push, um, stronger corral, perhaps, to um, behave and act in a certain way, either being enforced by your parents, well, actually being enforced by your parents, and then also being enforced by society.
Give me an example. I'm not sure what you mean.
Black English vernacular is one example. Like, if other like in school, uh, other black students, when they met me, right, and I don't speak, I don't pretty much ever use Black English vernacular. Um, like they're like they I don't know. It's just a thing,
No,
It's like,
you gotta
okay,
finish that
they
thought.
they they call me a white boy, essentially, or they would, right?
Did they really?
I mean, yeah, pretty much.
That's not an answer.
Yes, generally speaking is what I'm saying. Not definitely not all of them did, right?
Mhm.
Uh,
So what I'm hearing is you got a lot of crap from other Black kids because of the way you spoke.
and not just the way I spoke either. Also, like I was taking a lot of AP courses, right? And I was also playing sports and stuff like that.
Hmm, okay. Um, so why identify as mixed versus multi-ethnic or multiracial?
Because it's less syllables.
It's
I mean,
simplified.
what's the difference?
I just wondering. And then you said it was a blessing and a curse. So the curse is what part, and the blessing is what part?
I would say the curse is that you're not white, right? And the blessing is again that you have like I could I I could potentially fit in with more diverse groups due to my mixed heritage.
Okay. Okay. You shared with me one time that in one of your first college papers, you stated that you thought that my focus on race, as you were growing up, was because I was bitter about past wrongs, but that as you started your own adult life, you found that there's been some validity in the things that I taught you. What changed your perspective?
For those who don't know, um, like I was born, pretty light skinned, like really light skinned, and
Yes.
bleach blonde, right? So
Yes.
I I definitely didn't have the sort of African American experience growing up. Um, but as I continued to grow up and my skin started got to get darker along with my hair, I started to notice that people's initial impressions of me uh, were not what they once were, despite my actions being like basically the same.
Can you give an example?
No, I can't. All I remember noticing it though. I like noticing like over multiple occasions. I remember pointing it out to myself as like a freshman or sophomore in high school.
So were these reactions based on your teachers or peers or
Um,
other interactions in the community?
but I mean, I guess all of the above.
Mm,
I can't really say um much about like the outside community. I can't really say about like, oh well, I don't think teachers really reacted different. I mean, I guess kind of in the sense that I feel like they went a little bit easier on me because I was a minority that was you know um, performing really well in school or like really gifted academically, I guess. Um, um, I think definitely like students reacted differently. Oh, dude, there's this guy. Oh my gosh, one of my Uber drivers. This is
mhm.
like really recent. Just okay. To be fair, I guess you could say going to Berkeley is like winning the lottery, right? Or oh no, no, even better, even better. This guy, I'm 2 blocks away from downtown, right? I'm
Okay.
ordering an Uber, and this guy's like, oh, so like he just assumed that I wasn't a college student. And it's like, why would you assume that? Like, I don't know. Like, and you can't really say
How,
that
I mean,
that's a
what
hundred
did he
percent.
say? I mean, what did he say that made you think assumed you weren't a college student?
Um, no, yeah, he asked if I worked at Aldi full time, I think.
Okay.
And I was like, no, like I'm part-time student. He's like, oh, okay. And then we just didn't talk for the rest. um, yeah, see, that's the thing, is like you can't really conclude that an interaction went the way that it did um because of the color of your skin, right? You can't conclude that definitively individually. I mean, you can if you study many people, right? But on an individual level, it's hard to be like, oh, this guy reacted this way, and he would have reacted differently if my skin was lighter. You can't really like can't conclude that at all.
Uh, I don't necessarily agree with you, as you know.
Okay, that's true. That's true. That's true. I mean,
I
I
think
think in some extremes, definitely, or with prolonged exposure, you could definitely see like someone react differently in one scenario versus another.
well, okay, so I'll just use an example that happened with your brother, your middle brother. So he was kicked out of show choir band
Yeah,
because of his attitude.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I very much felt that most of that had to do with him not quote unquote knowing his place, because he was the kind of kid who was going to tell you what you thought whether or not you wanted him to. And he, like, his teacher had asked him a question, he answered the question the way that he does, which is very point blank, and honestly the teacher didn't like the answer he gave him. So he said he didn't have the right attitude to participate, even though his playing performance was stellar. And I think in those particular cases, when you have everything else is kind of spoken for, like, it wasn't about playing talent or skill, it wasn't about um reliability or being able to show up and do what was asked. It was literally about my about him not answering a question or not taking a stance where he should be grateful and thankful for the opportunity, and instead he just was, it's going to be what it's going to be. And the teacher being very upset by that because he felt that your brother had been disrespectful to him. And I was like, yeah, I'm sure he was disrespectful to you. He's been disrespectful to me. But at what point do we say that that's a reason you can't participate in an extracurricular when all things else are, you know, okay?
Could say that the dude is just like, sorry, I'm not gonna let any, child treat me with, less than the respect that I deserve as their instructor. It could be that. Like, it doesn't have to be that, oh, like, you know, this black kid should be so grateful that I'm giving him the opportunity to play in my band, right?
I think those things, I think that discomfort with kids pull, like particularly with kids pushing boundaries and authority, becomes much more sticky when race is added to it, because I think that um in some people's minds, as the adult, the child is always the child, and when the child doesn't see themselves as a child and doesn't play that role as a child, then they have an attitude problem that needs to be fixed. And I find that that is more prevalent with with how adults interact with black kids than I do with other kids.
And I would definitely agree. There, I mean, as far as I know, what it seems like, the studies indicate, from what I've seen, of course, is that there's a constant um, disadvantage that minorities get. Implicit bias. There you go. And so, like, there's no getting around that, right? That's just there. But I think, what's hard, like, I would say it's hard to say that that was the difference between, um, that bias in response to race was the difference between, the way that teach instructor reacted, and a much more calm reaction. I think it's hard to say that that's like, that discrepancy is solely due to, the color of Nathaniel's skin.
So, what's you said when your freshman and sophomore year, you started to notice differences. What were some of those, like, I know I asked you for a specific example and you didn't have one, but
Hmm.
what are some of those global differences that you feel like you experienced, and why do you like, what made you notice them in your mind?
Um, yeah, I feel like, I have a lot of concern, especially when it comes to women. I have a lot of concern, like, that, just walking down the street, that I give off an intimidating presence. Um, because I feel like that is a thing that I mean, I guess I don't know. I'm not
Has someone
a
actually
woman.
said that you're intimidating?
No, no, I'm constantly, like, aware of, I'm conscious that I may be perceived in that way, and I try to account for that. I mean, and yeah, like, you know, it's like, I've gotten glances back, right? Nervous glances, or something like that. And like, yeah, I mean, I
Have you
don't know.
ever seen someone, like, as you're coming towards them like clutch their purse or like reposition it?
Women don't carry purses. I mean, that I see.
Your
Like, I
age,
never see
people
anyone with.
your
Yeah,
age.
you're right. Right. I don't see people with purses, but that is the stereotypical reaction.
Interesting.
Yeah, I hate being stuck behind a woman. It's awful. It's awful. Like, yeah. I don't know.
Okay. Why do you hate being stuck behind a woman?
Because I feel like they are like nervous, like, oh, what's this guy doing following me, you know?
Okay. So I hear more of a gender concern than a racial concern.
Um, no, I think, I mean, I don't think a guy is like, I don't know. I feel like it's more extreme in that situation for a female versus a man, or for a guy versus a girl.
Right, but I still think it's what you're expressing is more of a gender concern than a racial concern.
I would say no, honestly. Like I feel like if I was white, like I would be a lot less concerned about
Why?
it. Because I don't like, what do you mean why?
Well, because like you said that you can't necessarily determine if anyone or
Yes.
interaction is due to race, right?
Yes.
But yet you're super conscious of being a black man walking around women and their 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 feelings of threat or intimidation because you're a black man, but you haven't necessarily, because particularly because your generation doesn't necessarily carry a purse, they carry those little change purse things or put everything in their phones. You've not necessarily experienced the moving of the purse or the repositioning of someone based on race alone.
Um, I mean, yeah, of course not based on race alone. I can't change my gender, right? And be like, oh, like see if I was if I'm, you know, I mean, yeah, I mean, I haven't done that experiment, right? But I mean, um, I think, I don't know. I think being black is more of a fact. I do.
You think being black is more of a what?
A factor
Why?
because society. I don't know. I don't think there's any real difference in race. I'm pretty sure studies say that there's no real difference in the race, like um at least then not any that are statistically significant once you control for all the variation in people's conditions. um
So I guess what I'm trying to get at is that something
hmm,
I taught you to believe? Is that something society or, that you've learned? Like, for example, when I was your age, I didn't really think race was an issue. Like, I didn't think it really meant anything. You know, I didn't think it meant anything. But as I was in the military when I was your age and had experiences where I kind of got kicked out of situations, like I was labeled as having an attitude problem, and I was like, what's my attitude problem? Well, you think you should get your own way. Well, what do you mean by that? Like, when I tried to unpack what people were saying, it didn't make sense other than the fact that I didn't perform blackness the way that they thought I should. And because I didn't fit in a box that was comfortable to them, I made them uncomfortable. And I continue to feel like that's an issue. But it was the people around me that made me think that race took, like, that the or the factor there was race, and in some cases gender, more than anything else, that I could be, if I were a white male and behaved and acted the way I do, then I would not have had so much of an issue.
it's impossible to say. It's impossible to know. It's right. It's like, what if like you actually just had an attitude problem, you know, and it wasn't your race or your gender.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
but I
go
mean,
ahead.
yeah, I don't know. I don't know. It's yeah. I don't know. You know.
So let me ask you this. Do most people assume that you're black or know that you're black or act as if, like, do most
Yes.
people, they do.
Well, they. I mean, most people start with mixed, and then people are like, oh, the easy ones are white slash black, one or the other, and then like, I mean, yeah, it's usually like the guesses are mixed, then white, then black, right?
Okay. So, do you feel that that recognition shapes their interactions or their responses to you?
Today, definitely not today. Um, no, I mean, I think most of what shapes interactions with me today is like my academic performance, um, and behavior in class as well.
Okay.
Um, well, I mean, and yeah, I don't do much socializing outside, so it's kind of outside of school, so it's hard to say today. What was the question again?
I was asking you if you feel like most people know that you're at least partially black, if
Mhm.
that then changes the way they interact with you versus
Yeah,
other folks. Well,
yeah,
I'll give you another
uh,
example. So when I was a grad student at the University of Iowa, I was on the first floor in one of the big like gallery rooms. And I was talking with this guy. I was taking a hip hop class and we were talking about hip hop and we were getting like really into the conversation and we were asked to leave the library because we were too loud. Um when there was like maybe 3 people in the whole entire room, and as far as I could tell we weren't really very loud at all. But those are things that you those are things that folks like me take very personally because there's always it's easy to say, well, you're loud, so you have to leave. First thing, why not just ask us to be quiet versus leaving? How do you go from a rule infraction to getting kicked out? That spread of response doesn't seem to be as immediate with other folks. And then secondly, we actually felt like the topic of our conversation, since we're talking about hip hop and we're talking about rap music and all of that, was much more disturbing to whomever complained than anything else. And we never like we were told, well, you could go up to a study room, which are notoriously not available, or you can leave. That was the only two options we had. We didn't even have an option to go to another area, really, which was kind of silly as grad students in the library. It didn't make sense. Do you have those kinds of experiences?
um, I would say no, and I would say, that, uh, I don't know. I mean, I think that, I don't know. I'm a very, I don't behave in a way where such issue is likely to happen. I think.
What does that
I
mean?
think. Oh, I think in your terms, like, I stay in my box, right? For the most part.
You stay in your box. What does it mean to stay in your box?
Well, I mean, people can tell like the type of person I am, despite my skin color, pretty soon after seeing me, because I usually wear like, business casual clothes, right? Is that the right term? Like button up shirts
Yeah,
and
that's business. Yeah,
pants.
no, it's business. Yeah, it's business casual.
Yeah, like I don't dress like most other students. I also like I'm looking
As
very
he's
serious
wearing
for
a
the most
hoodie,
part.
by the way, as you're
Yeah, 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 doesn't count. Doesn't count. I'm not going to school anytime soon. I'm leaving tomorrow. Um, gosh, you totally derailed what I was thinking.
sorry. I just had to point that out because you're
Yeah,
wearing
you're
a
right. You're
hoodie.
right.
So
You're right. I've my favorite shirts packed, so I'm not wearing them for that reason. Um, but yeah, I dress in a very, a formal way. I you know
conservative.
conservative.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, conservative. You're not like, it's not super flashy. You're not like in the latest trend. You're just fairly
Hmm.
conservatively dressed.
Hmm.
Because it's not formal. You're not wearing a tux.
Yeah.
So it's just
Yeah.
more conservative than, casual.
Yeah. I guess so.
So I
Yeah.
guess so have you and your brothers had conversations about race and differences in any differences in what you perceive is going on for each of you?
I mean, Nathaniel and I agree that like okay, I don't know. Nathaniel and I agree that being mixed is really cool. Um, um, and I don't know. We both want to like close out the like the um I don't know, range of multi-ethnicity. Like I don't know. I remember us talking to me like, oh, it'd be cool like if, he married an Asian lady and I married a South American, because then we'd like have,
Every
people from every continent, or I guess technically not Australia, but I mean, I don't know.
So do you feel like you because you're multi-ethnic or mixed that you're more open to being in a relationship or dating interracially than perhaps other people your age?
Um, yes, yes, 100%, 100%. Oh, I mean, maybe. I mean, I don't know. It's hard to say. But I think so. I think so. I definitely think that perhaps more I don't know, hetero racial, like one race. I don't know.
I don't know what you're trying to explain there.
I'm saying one people that are only one race, people that aren't multi-ethnic.
Okay, they're
Like though I feel like, yeah, they are more likely to date those of the same race. But I mean it's also like I don't know. Hard to say. Hard to say.
okay. According to Jean Twinge, and I have that book somewhere around here. Oh yeah, here it is. This book, we talked about this book last time.
Yeah, I
Um,
know.
in
Dumb
her
book.
book, in
I'm
her book,
sorry. I'm sorry.
iGen, she says most iGeners said diversity is acceptable instead of desirable. For a quintessentially iGen reason race doesn't matter. How accurate do you feel the sentiment is today?
Okay, I call BS. I call BS. Um, so okay, the whole thing about race doesn't matter. I like that's not an us thing. That's a y'all thing, because you guys, it's your generation that was like, oh, like institutionalized, like, oh, like don't see race, like all that stuff, like which is dumb and wrong, of course. Um,
So
you
you're
know, so
blaming
so it's
my
not.
so you're blaming my generation for colorblindness?
Yes, for
Okay.
in for raising us to to uh like behave in that manner, or like to preach that, I guess.
But I didn't raise you like that.
No,
That's exactly the
but
opposite way I raised you.
my school did, like Wickham.
Mm-hmm.
It was very like, oh, we don't see color, which is BS.
So, okay, what makes you say that color blindness is BS?
Well, you can say it, but it's not true. It doesn't eliminate your implicit bias, right?
So you
And
you you think implicit bias is a real thing?
yes.
Well, not if we're Does like I'm not just because I'm your mother doesn't mean that I assume I know everything about you.
You're right. You're right. Not everyone believes the world is round either.
Okay, so some folks would say that white privilege isn't really a thing.
Yes.
Do you think white privilege is a thing?
Um, yeah, of course. Yeah, I'd say.
Okay, why of course.
Well, it's not, I mean, they're privileged in the sense that, like you don't get the same crap that other people, like, for example, like, natives or African Americans, like you don't have that historical, um, you know, uh, for lack of a better term, shafting that they've received relative to white people, you know?
Okay. Um I'm going to link this back to another question that I have for you. So,
Yes.
most of your life, at least all of many of the interactions between you and your brothers to this day, as far as I know, still refer to you as the white boy, which I have tried
Yes.
to get them to stop many, many, many times. How does that make you feel?
Well, it's kind of like pot kettle, you know? Like it's not like it's not like I act more white than they act, right? What it comes down to is I'm like a couple shades lighter than they are. And I think it's really like, I mean, it's perhaps they may be trying to communicate that that difference does does make a difference in the way that I'm treated versus how they're treated. Um,
Have you ever had that conversation with them?
no, no.
Do you feel like that is an actual thing that you have had some advantages over them?
I think when I was younger, I'd say yes. It was a lot. I mean, I think there was a bigger difference back then too. I mean, I feel like we're a lot closer to, like, I don't know. I feel like we're like it's a sense. There's I wouldn't say there's much difference now in terms of treatment, because I mean we don't look that far off in terms of skin color, anyways.
Okay.
Uh,
So, have you ever had a conversation with other Black kids about being light skinned?
um, yes.
And what did you all talk about?
Um, I had this friend, Awalu. He basically, I think he told me that like it's a lot easier for me to um act white than it is for him, or to like, yeah, to successfully like behave slash act white, I guess.
Do you believe that that quote unquote acting white is a thing? Or I mean, I've struggled with that because I've been told my entire life that, you you know this. I have turned it as I'm culturally white, so people understand kind of where I'm coming from. Not that I really ascribe to being culturally white, but that's the way to help people understand that I'm not. I wasn't raised. I was raised in predominantly Black neighborhoods, but I didn't actually interact with a lot of Black kids in my neighborhoods. And instead, most of my interactions were at school, and that was with white kids. So those were some of my biggest social connections were with white kids at school. And so that kind of reinforced what I was already being taught at home.
Yeah, I would say, to answer your question, I would say that on a societal level, there is, I mean, I guess at every level, there's at every group of people carries with it a normalized way that you should behave, right? Um, and I think that at a more macro level in the country, that norm um, matches the white cultural norms a lot better than it does other cultural. Um,
Okay.
and
Go
and
ahead.
so I'd say like, oh man, I forgot your question, but that was part of my answer.
Well, no. So, do you think you've been advantaged by being light
Oh,
skinned?
um,
And you
b-
were talking about, we were talking about it provided you more access to quote unquote being able to act white.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't know. I mean, I would say yes. Yeah, I'd say yes. Why though? I mean, I have your upbringing. So that, I mean, that's something that's not necessarily due to race. I don't know. I mean, I just think it's different. Like being having darker skin color would, I feel like someone with a darker shade of skin would have to, you know, try harder to come off as like actually white. I don't think it's hard to like fit that to other black people, but for white people to kind of more accept that behavior slash whatever you want to call it, um, as white or whatever, or as acceptable or whatever. I think it's a lot more difficult, the darker skin you have, I guess.
So, one of the things that I find a little troubling in the way that we're talking about things is we're acting as if um being eurocentrically focused is a good thing, or is I mean is the thing that we should aspire to. So for example, like I out here in California, there's a lot of Latinos, and not all Latinos. I guess the good best example is Lopez versus Lopez, that new TV show, right? She doesn't speak Spanish, and so her dad is like, well, you're less, you're not really a Lopez if you don't speak Spanish. And yet, I mean, we've been a country that has said we want people to assimilate, but then we also want people to be comfortable in their own skin ish, but only if they assimilate. Does that make sense?
I think that's more of a time like, I would say that, I mean, historically assimilate has been the thing, right? And you can see that specifically in Native Americans, the way that they were basically forced to assimilate, like assimilate or die, basically. Um, so I think historically, like that urge was, oh yes, okay, but even now it's like I agree with you in some ways, but yes, I see what you're saying here. I see what you're saying here. Okay, repeat the question.
Oh my gosh, I don't remember exactly the word. It wasn't a written down
Yeah, yeah,
question. So
yeah, yeah.
it's
I
just
mean,
that
yeah,
we
it's
like, okay, so there's this notion that white privilege doesn't exist outside of
yes,
academia, but yet
yes,
culturally speaking, what we've enshrined as the norm in our country has been a very Eurocentric focused
yes, yes.
version of life experiences,
Hmm.
etc. Yet in our conversation, we seem to be suggesting that that's the way it ought to be, when I don't think that's what we want to be saying at all.
Well, I mean, the problem is that that's what's, I mean, that's kind of what's dominant in our society and in the world. So it's, I mean, it's like, yes, it sucks, but that's just kind of the way things are right now, where like a lot of things are more Eurocentric, and or like a lot of norms and beliefs are more Eurocentric, I guess. Yeah.
So I'm gonna go. You said earlier that you didn't really speak Black English vernacular, and I'm gonna push on that a little bit because I remember somewhere between like 18 and 19 ish. I remember talking to you on the phone, and you had lowered your voice and you were using a very different vernacular than like speech pattern than I'm really accustomed to. I wouldn't say it was full on Black English vernacular, but
Yeah,
you
yeah.
sounded much more quote unquote Black than I'm used to you sounding. W- Like, what would provide you the impetus to do that?
Um, I think at the time I was just watching a lot of like black YouTubers. Because I do remember that, and I like yeah, I was watching a lot of like I don't know black YouTubers at the time.
What was making you watch those Black YouTubers? Like, what were you
I
watching
mean,
specifically?
I was like, I don't know, stuff. They were like short skits. A lot of them were about like, like shows that I watch or like that I've watched or like, I don't know.
Oh,
Just, yeah, I don't know.
okay.
Just relatable things, I guess.
Okay. So here's a written down question. Stereotype threat theory states that people who are influenced by negative stereotypes about them and worry that they will be judged or treated in terms of the stereotype, or that they might do something that would inadvertently confirm it. That's from Steele Spence in Arizona. Have you ever been afraid or anxious about confirming or reinforcing stereotypes? If so, when?
100%. Like, I don't know. I'm cocky, right? I think that I am smart. And I get really annoyed when people don't uh like treat me or interact with me as like when they treat me like I'm dumb. It kind of pisses me off. And I feel like there's a racial component to people maybe thinking that I'm not uh, as academically able as I am, and that is a part of why I dress more formally is because like academia I like I mean I'm communicating with myself and with others that like this is something that I do take very seriously, um, and that I do prepare for and work on a lot and so yeah, I mean I guess but that's it's not just race, but I would say yes. The problem is though that regardless of what I do, I'm pretty much still reinforcing this stereotype. Actually no, uh, there's oh gosh, I really wish I had this prepared. I was gonna look for it earlier. There's this book by a um, Harvard psychologist that I used in a paper last semester, and he talks about like how um, for example like me dressing up kind of like it in a way communicates that like oh like maybe don't judge me in the way that you would stereotypically judge other African Americans as perhaps being less academically able, right?
Mhm.
But in doing so I am confirming that stereotype in that I am saying, hey, I'm not like the like other African Americans who are like this. So even trying not to play into that stereotype, I end up enforcing the stereotype. And so it's kind of
Reinforcing.
really yeah, it's kind of sad.
This has been another episode of Uncommon Voices, Uncommon Visions. I'm your host, Dr. Valerie Nyberg. Thank you for listening and or watching. Please feel free to like, share, or comment on this episode. And thank you for your time, and we'll see you next time.